up, my friends? Welcome back to my channel. So in this video, we're going to be going over my top 24 books of 2024, which that sounds like quite a lot, but I'm going to tell you right now, I had a very difficult time picking only 24 books for this list. Okay, so I have these broken down by genre, but I am going to tell you that I am a primarily romance reader, so we're going to have a lot of romance books to cover. These will be spoiler free. I'm probably not even going to share too much of a summary on them because we have so many books to get through. I'll give you a rating for overall how much I love the book on a scale of 1 to 5, and then I will also let you know my rating for spice, so how spicy the book is, or if there's no spice whatsoever. That way, if you're not comfortable with spice, you know not to proceed with that particular title. Starting off in the historical fiction genre, I really wish I had done more reading in this genre in 2024. However, we all go through seasons as readers, and historical fiction just didn't fit with the type of vibe that I needed. I want to give my attention and focus as much as I can to historical fictions. A lot of them have me doing a lot of introspection. In 2024, I just didn't have the focus to dedicate to it, so I didn't get to a lot of historical fictions. However, The Women by Kristin Hannah, it's set in Vietnam War, and it was just one of the most impactful books I've ever read. I just felt that the way she navigates such an important topic was just phenomenal. She never lets me down. Her historical fictions just have a way of really tearing through your soul, and that's exactly what happened here. It was such a fresh take on the Vietnam War. She did such a good job presenting a full and complete story as much as you really can. I just absolutely loved it. I thought that the characters were messy and flawed and just done so well. It was a 5-star read for me. There are no spicy, explicit scenes in this book, but it is definitely a topic that is discussed, and there is some content warning, so you may want to look that up before proceeding into the book. I just walked away from this book with such a feeling of inspiration. It's just amazing to know that we are really walking among heroes every single day that may have stories that were just completely looked over. Just such a good book, and if you're into historical fiction, I would definitely recommend getting into it. The next one, also incredibly impactful, and I think this is going to go down as one of my favorite books that I've ever read, and it was The Wishing Game by Meg Shaffer. There was something so special and unique about this book. This was a 5-star read for me. There are no spicy scenes whatsoever in this one. I believe this one is actually considered just a contemporary fiction, but it has almost a magical vibe to it without being fully magical, if that makes sense. It has like that whimsical overall feel. It almost has like a Willy Wonka feel to it. If you have readers in your life that are on like the young adult side that are looking for a book that can really impact them, I think this book had such a beautiful message and such a beautiful story. It was kind of like a found family, unconditional love. Even though a lot of the topics are really on the heavier side, the way that the author wrote it was just absolutely beautiful. So 100% recommend that one. Next up, I'm going to go into some historical romances. I really spent a lot of time in historical romances this year because I don't feel like a lot of people talk about historical romances. So I kind of made it my mission, and I enjoyed every second of it, to find the best of the best when it comes to historical romances. And I discovered some authors this year that absolutely blew me away. The first one that I want to talk about, it was very difficult for me to pick only one from this author, so just look her up and read any of her books. She has a couple contemporary romances, but the bulk of her books are historical romances. Jess Heileman, and since I had to pick, I will go back and forth between 2 books, but right now I'm going to say The Naabs Daughter. This book was a 5-star read for me, and it has no spice in it whatsoever. It's a clean, closed-door romance. This one reminded me why I love to read. It was one of those books that completely swept me away. The romance in it was so beautiful. The character development was so beautiful. There was a banter between the 2 main characters. There was this sense of partnership even before they recognized that's what it was. Please, if you're into historical romances, look up Jess Heileman, because I don't think there is anyone on this planet that writes the way she does. She just sweeps me away in her stories every single time I read it. I selfishly want her to write more books so I can consume more of her books, but at the same time, I know that the reason why they are as good as they are is because of the fact that she takes so much time to write them. I am looking forward to 2025. I'm sure she has something else coming out, and I truly cannot wait. Another author that I discovered this year, if you want a spicy historical romance writer, is Lisa Kleypas. Apparently, she's been around for like over 20 years, and I had never discovered her before. Never really read a historical romance. I didn't discover my love for it until last year, but truly solidified it this year. The book that I have to pick, even though I read several of hers and loved them all, is Secrets of a Summer Night, and that is from the Wallflower series, and I would just recommend the entire series, but this one in particular was so well done. This one I gave a 4.5 out of 5 on stars, and for spice rating, I'd say it's somewhere in between a 1 or a 2. My favorite trope is enemies to lovers, and this one had such a great tension and banter to the enemies to lovers. It was just done so well. She balances angst without frustration in a way that most people cannot. And what I really love about her writing is she varies up the point of view. It's mostly always the two main characters that get the bulk of the real estate when it comes to the point of view in the book. But sometimes she sprinkles in background characters with a point of view, which kind of gives a really complete look to the book without overwhelming you with too many characters to follow, if that makes sense. I just love her writing. I'm so happy I discovered it. And I'd recommend any of the books from the Wallflower series, but this one is definitely my favorite. All right, another author that I discovered in 2024 was Mia Vincy. And my favorite from her was called A Wicked Kind of Husband. And I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 on stars, 1 out of 5 on spice. So there is some spice in her books. This one opened my eyes to a specific trope that I didn't know I'd love. And it's like an arranged marriage or marriage of convenience trope, but it's done in a little bit of a different way. They got married and then they fully separated and lived completely different lives, and then like a year later they had to come back together and then discover a relationship with each other. I just thought that it was so well done. This author only has a few titles out there, and I have literally put off reading the last book that is available for me to read because I don't want to be done with all of her published work. I'm like really sad to get to that point. What I loved most about this book and why I picked this one from the books that I've read from her, it starts off in such a funny way that I ended up reading the scene to John and we were both laughing about it together. She did a really good job at balancing deep emotional scenes with comedic relief scenes. It was just really good. So another one that I would definitely get on your radar if you like historical romance. All right, next up we're going to move into some contemporary romance. I'm going to start off with the more raunchy ones, or a little bit more risque, if you will, and then we'll go into, there'll probably still be spicy and there'll be a couple clean contemporary romances. I just wanted to start with these ones. So the first one is called Anger Banger, and it's by S.M. Shade. And it's from the Happy Haven series. And it was hard for me to pick between the two books, honestly, in that series, but I had to go with Anger Banger. But the first one is hilarious. This one was a 5-star read for me, and spice level is 2, but I will say it's raunchy. So if you're not into like raunchy type books, you probably wouldn't want to read this one. If you like kind of like unhinged chaos, just hilarious banter, wittiness, and just a wild time, get those two books on your radar. But specifically Anger Banger, it was just pure entertainment. Like, this book was such entertainment. It's set in a trailer park. I never watched that show Shameless, but I've seen a lot of people online commenting that it has the vibes of that show. So if you were into that show, you would probably love this book. Definitely get it on your radar if you're looking for fun and you're okay with spicy topics. Next one was called Craving Chaos by Jill Ramsower. This one I gave a 4.5 out of 5, and spice is between like a 3 and 4 out of 5. So very high on the spice. I would consider this one a dark romance. This one is like a mafia style romance, but somehow it felt super warm. It didn't have that coldness that the mafia books usually have. There was definitely morally gray moments in this book, for sure, but it didn't have that normal frustration that comes with morally gray. It was somehow super relatable. It just felt like the angst was done in such a good way. So that is definitely one that I get on your radar, but definitely check the content warnings on that one before diving in, because I wouldn't want to send you into something. That one gets pretty wild, so you might want to just proceed with caution on it. All right, now we're going to dive into kind of a mix of spicy romance, but more mild spice, and then some clean romances. So first up, I have the book Mixed Signals by B.K. Borison. I don't even know what about this book just stuck with me so much. When I think back on 2024, this book was one of my favorite romances that I read. This is from the Lovelight Farms series books, and Lovelight Farms is a really good Christmas book. So if you're looking for a last minute Christmas book to pick up, because I know this is going up on Christmas Eve, the Lovelight Farms one is really cute, but this one was definitely my favorite from that series. I gave it a 5-star rating and then 1 out of 5 on spice. I think what I loved most about it is the boyfriend in the book. He was just ultimate goals. He was literally the definition of if he wanted to, he would. It wasn't super angsty. I just think that it was handled really well. That one is definitely one I'd get on your radar. Next, Rope the Moon by Ava Hunter. This one I gave a 5-star for, and spice, I'm going between 1 and 2. So it's like a 1.5 on spice. Okay, I gotta tell you guys something. A lot of people are obsessed with the Chestnut Springs series from LC Silver. And I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I didn't think that it was the hype that everybody made it out to be. If you're looking for that style romance book and you want it to be even better, please pick up the Runaway Ranch series from Ava Hunter. This is book number 2 in it. I think that book number 1 was actually in my top 23 of 2023. It was called Tame the Heart, and Rope the Moon made it in my top 24 of 2024. It's, like I said, a cowboy style romance. She does such a good job at weaving in a few different dynamics into her books. In this one, it almost has a little bit of a Yellowstone vibe. So there is like a little bit of a suspense element on it. There is some emotional stuff happening. There's just an overall romance that was just really done really, really well. So if you're looking for a romance book that has a little bit more depth to it, I would definitely recommend picking this one up. Although I didn't love the Chestnut Springs series from LC Silver, I absolutely loved the book Wild Love. This one I gave a 4.5 out of 5 on stars, 2 out of 5 on spice. The reason why I loved this book so much is because of the main female character. Her name was Rosie, and she had this really, really relatable way of being a Spitfire, but also being unsure of herself. She was her top form Spitfire, mostly with the male character in this book, and that's how you felt like the connection of theirs were so real, because she felt so comfortable with him. To me, that just gave such a really nice extra layer to the romance side of it. The main male character is like the perfect blend of like nerdy and billionaire. I feel like I overused the word dynamic, but he was really a dynamic character. He had so many different layers to him, and it just worked out really well. And it just cracks me up because I think this book was like under 400 pages. And I don't understand how sometimes authors really just can nail it on getting you everything that you need for the story and the character development in under 400 pages. But that was done really, really well in this book. Next up that I really need you guys to get on your radar was You with a View by Jessica Joyce. I read 2 books from her this year. The other one was called The X-Files. It was very difficult for me to pick between the 2, but I ended up going with this one. It is a spicy romance. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 on stars. Spice, I gave it a 1.5 out of 5. And I'm going to tell you this book had such a beautiful plot to it. It basically is about navigating grief. So I just want to give you a content warning on that's what this book is about. But it's done in a very like hopeful and inspiring and unique way. And I actually felt like the spicy scenes just were completely unnecessary in this book. So although I'm fine with spice, I like spice every so often, I just felt like it got in the way. So that's why this wasn't a full 5-star for me. I feel like the story could have soared a little bit more, and then it would have been a full 5-star for me. But overall, this book is just really beautiful. There was a lot of really good, insightful quotes in this book. I found it so beautiful. And if you're in a place where maybe you're navigating grief and you're in a good space where you can start to try to heal a little bit more, and you need a book that touches on it without being like a personal development style book, I think this one had a lot of healing words in it that would probably help you sort through your emotions on it. Next up, we had The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. This one was a 5-star for me, 1 out of 5 on spice. This book is just a quintessential escape romance style book. It's a vacation romance book, so you get the vacation vibes and the banter in it and the comedy, and there was like a situation that the main character was working through, and so there was like a little bit of emotional depth to it. I just think that it was an incredibly balanced book. The cover on it is absolutely gorgeous, so that's a 5-star for me. Overall, I just thought it was a really well done book. Definitely one that I would recommend if you're looking for a lighter, entertaining, spicy read. Okay, next one that we have in the spicy romance area is The Rule Book by Sarah Adams. This one I gave a 5-star, 1 out of 5 on spice. With Sarah Adams, she generally does closed-door romance where there's no explicit scenes. However, in this book, she decided to add an explicit scene, but at the beginning of the book, she actually tells you which chapter it is, and it doesn't hurt to skip over that chapter in terms of plot development. So I like that she did that because it gives you an opportunity to kind of choose whether or not you want to consume any spice in the book. So the thing with Sarah Adams, and the reason why I love her book so much, is because I feel like she writes the perfect book boyfriend. As much as I loved the book boyfriend in this book, I loved the main female character even more. She just was so refreshing. She had such a beautiful blend of insecurities and confidence. I was like rooting her on the entire book. I just kept thinking she was such a force to be reckoned with, but she was also really quirky and really adorable. She was so relatable, but also inspiring at the same time. I would recommend any book, including if Sarah Adams ever just published a takeout menu, I would recommend picking up anything written by her. So definitely get this one on your radar. It's a sports romance. The main male character is a football player and she is a sports agent. It also had that whole women navigating the mail fields environment going on, and I thought that was really great. Okay, these next few are mostly closed door romances. So first one is Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. This one I gave a 4.5 out of 5 on stars, 0 out of 5 on Spice. Annabelle Monaghan just writes the most mature relationships. They feel healthy, they feel developed, the connection just feels so strong. The characters are always witty, and I feel like she covers a lot of topics that we all have to navigate to a different extent. So although the exact situation may not match up with something we've experienced, the underlying message is always something that I feel like people could apply to themselves. So it feels like she takes a romance and really incorporates some items that can be very healing for people. And I just love that. I think it's a great way to be able to consume some healing words in a very entertaining way. And it was such a good one to read in the summer. It's called Summer Romance. It just had all those vibes to it. Another perfect one for summer is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. But honestly, you could read it any time of year. This one I gave a 5 out of 5 on stars. Spice I gave a 0.5. It's not super explicit, but it's definitely a little bit more than fully closed door on this one. Abby Jimenez, she has this way of like ripping your heart open and then healing it. This book is from the Part of Your World series. The first 2 books, I felt like you didn't have to read them together. They were pretty much standalones. But this one, I would recommend reading Part of Your World, and trust me, you won't be mad at me about that because that is such an amazing book. There is a connection to some of the characters from Part of Your Worlds that I think would be good to read together. She has such a beautiful writing style. She navigates trauma in books like you would not believe. I feel like she dives into incredibly tragic situations and just handles them with such grace. I don't know how she does it. You never walk away feeling too heavy after having read her book. You walk away feeling inspired and touched, or at least I do. I just would recommend anything by her, but this one was definitely one of my favorites of 2024. Next up, The Romcomers by Catherine Center. This one was a 5-star for me, 0 out of 5 on Spice. And I'm going to tell you right now that if I had to sit there and pick my favorite romantic comedy book that I've ever read, it would be this book by Catherine Center. I actually had the opportunity to go to her book signing for this book this year. It was such a magical experience. I know some of you have come to my channel from either Jessica O'Donoghue or Mandy in the Making, and I got to go with them to go meet Catherine Center, and we just had such a blast. Mandy's friend Lori came with us, and the 4 of us just had so much fun. I also got to meet one of my book friends from my Bookstagram account, Lindsay. She came and met us there as well. So if you ever happen to see that your favorite author is somewhere that you can get to, go do it. I got to hear her talk about this book. We also got to hear a preview of the book that she's publishing in 2025, and I would definitely recommend picking up this book. It had that 90s nostalgic feeling to it when it comes to romantic comedy. She does have a lot of heavier topics in her books, but she does a really good job at bringing in comedic relief moments that don't feel forced. She just writes in such a natural way. Everything that she does just makes sense. And what I loved about this book is Emma. Emma is the main character. She just was like unapologetically herself, and it was just so refreshing to read. She doesn't meet the definition of success that most people have, but she didn't let it deter her from life. And I felt like the way she prioritized certain things in her life was really just beautiful. Overall, I could not recommend this book more. I've read a lot of romantic comedies, so for me to say that this is my favorite romantic comedy book, that is a big deal. So definitely recommend that one. All right, next up is actually a young adult that I read, which I was completely shocked by. If somebody told me that this was going to end up on this list, I probably would have laughed you out of the room. It's Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 on stars. I did give it a 0.5 out of 5 on Spice. Closed door. However, it being a young adult, I feel like I just need to warn that the topic is discussed pretty in detail. So although there's not explicit scenes, it's definitely there. So I just want people to be aware before they head into the book. But this book is about chess. Okay, and honestly, romance took a back seat to it, and I was there for it. I loved reading about chess, which, again, if you had told me prior to reading this book that I would be this into a book about chess, I would have thought you were hilarious. Ali Hazelwood is an auto-buy author of mine. I really like the way that she writes. I know some people don't love the way she writes, but I do. And I just thought this book was really great. It kind of reminded me of like a Mighty Ducks, or like one of those movies that you watched back in the 90s. You know, as the credits come up, you feel inspired, you feel motivated. That's what this book reminded me of. It had kind of like that sportsy vibe to it where you're rooting on the situation. So I thought that was really well done. The humor in it is my style. So if you're not into like dry, witty humor, you might not like this one as much as I did, but I loved it for that reason. I would definitely recommend picking up this book. I just thought it was so entertaining. Speaking of entertaining, this one is not a romance. I think it would actually be considered, I would say it's like comedy meets romance meets cozy mystery, but this one's called Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutanto. Her book, Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for, and I don't think I can say the word, was one of my top picks of 2023, and actually one of my top picks for books in general. I think that it is hilarious, and I think it's a good palate cleanser, and same with this one. I feel like this is such a good palate cleanser. It has so many different elements in it. There's comedy, there's romance, there's suspense, there's a really hilarious family. This one was a 5-star for me and 0 out of 5 on Spice. This one has like meddling aunties in it. What I love about the way the author writes is every book that I've read from her, she does a really good job at diving into Asian culture, being respectful, but also challenging. And that's what she does here. She's very respectful towards the older members of the community that are in this book, but still kind of trying to bring them into more modern times. I don't know how she balances it. It's just done so wonderfully, and she's just pure entertainment. There's twists and turns happening. It was like the type of book I did not want to put down, so definitely recommend that one. The next one is actually another Ali Hazelwood book, and this one I think is considered romantic fantasy. I think that's where it would end up. This one was a 5-star for me, 2 out of 5 on Spice. Some might even consider it like 3 out of 5 on Spice. This one is another one, again, with Ali Hazelwood, that if you had told me that this book was going to end up on this list prior to me reading it, I would have thought you were crazy, but I guess Ali Hazelwood just wanted to shock me this year. It's a book about a werewolf and a vampire. It's almost like a mafia vibe with like an arranged marriage situation, and I'm not like super into fantasy books. We're going to cover fantasy in a minute. It's just not one of my top genres. Like, I didn't like the characters, but I also loved the characters. It was like they weren't likable, but they were lovable. I don't know how to explain it. They were really dry. There wasn't a lot of warmth to the situation, but somehow that was the charm. You know, that was what I loved the most about it. This book definitely would not be for everybody. It's, like I said, the spice could be anywhere from 2 to 3. I think there's definitely some scenarios in the book that would make other people uncomfortable. Check the summary, check the content warnings before you head into it. But if you're pretty open when it comes to the different books that you can read, and you want something super entertaining, I would definitely recommend this one. Okay, so now let's discuss a couple romantasy books. Let me preface this by saying to anybody who reads actual fantasy books, just know that I don't. I'm not into the books yet. Maybe I will get there eventually, where I have to follow like character charts and maps and things like that. It's just not where I'm at in my reading journey. I completely respect people who are into those books, but it's just not me. So when I recommend a fantasy book, it's probably not going to be that high fantasy that some people read. These are definitely more on the tamer side of the fantasy end and feature a good amount of romance. So this one's a romantasy. It's called From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 on Stars, 2 out of 5 on Spice. This book was so good. I haven't had a book capture my attention the way this book did since Fourth Wing. So if you were into Fourth Wing and you can handle a little extra spice, I would definitely recommend picking up this series. But I will warn you that the spice escalates as the series goes on. So this was probably the most tame of the books in terms of spice factor. What I loved about this book is I felt like this author did such a great job at building the world without confusing you and building characters without confusing you. I felt like she layered in the details that you need at the perfect time. So I wasn't getting overwhelmed with too much information at once. It really was like brought in exactly as you need it. So if you're looking for an introduction to fantasy, maybe you already read Fourth Wing and you're like looking at other fantasy series, I would definitely recommend this one. I know most people would tell you A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, but I didn't vibe with that series, and I didn't vibe with Throne of Glass, just so you know. But this one, it got me just like Fourth Wing did. So I'd recommend this one. Another one that got me just like Fourth Wing did, and I think is even more introductory level, is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. This one I gave a 4.5 out of 5 on stars and 2 out of 5 on spice. This one was so well done. There's a lot of twists and turns in this one, but overall it's a very straightforward story. There's not a lot of world building. There's not a lot of character building. It's pretty simple to follow. Yet when I say simple, I don't want that to be taken as a negative. I felt like in this one, it was done really well. Again, kind of like in the last book that I just mentioned, she does a good job at layering in the elements that you need right when you need them. And the twists and turns were just so good in this book. What I loved about it too is this one ends on a cliffhanger, but it's not a frustrating cliffhanger. I am intrigued to continue on in the series, but I'm not upset with the way that it ended. Like, I'm okay waiting, but it definitely invites me to want to read more. If you can hear my children in the background, by the way, they are with their father, aka John. However, they're going a little crazy, but he is supervising the crazy. But you may hear them. They do live here. We're going to dive now into thrillers. The first one was called First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. This one I gave a 5 out of 5 on stars, 0 out of 5 on spice. This was the perfect thriller. I cannot tell you another time that I've read a thriller I loved as much as this one. Generally, when I read thrillers, I have a hard time with the characters. I feel like a lot of authors write, and it makes sense, they write the characters in a way where they're unlikable because they need to be suspicious. In this book, I don't feel like she did that. I feel like you still question what was happening with the characters, but you were still rooting them on. The twists and turns were completely unexpected in this book. So like I said, I don't know what else could have been done better in this book. I think it's one of the best thrillers that I've read. Next up, this one, the cover looks like it's a super duper thriller, but it actually, I feel like was more on like the cozy thriller side, and it was Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. I gave it a 5-star rating, 1 out of 5 on spice. I read this book. I'm not really like an audiobook person, mostly because I just can't ever focus. But if you happen to be into audiobooks, I think this one would possibly be even better in audiobook form. It's on the cozy mystery side, even though I think it's labeled as a thriller. There's a lot of comedic moments in it. There's like a meddling grandmother that just was hilarious. I just absolutely loved that element of it. The suspense was really good in this one. It was one of those books where you did not want to put it down. You did not want to have to get back to adulting. You know what I mean? If you're looking for a thriller that challenges your mind, but doesn't like super creep you out, isn't like bone chilling, isn't gory in any way, this one would probably be a good one. It has like that cold case, true crime podcast vibe to it. So if you're into true crime podcasts, you'd probably love this book. All right, last up in our 24 books of 2024 is a Christmas book, and it's How My Neighbor Stole Christmas by Megan Quinn. I had to finish off with at least one Christmas book. This is a spicy romance Christmas book, and I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 on stars, 2 out of 5 on spice, so it is on the spicier side. This is another one that I got an opportunity to actually go meet Megan Quinn. She came to my area, so I got to drive down with one of my friends, and we got to go meet her, and we had so much fun. She talked about the book, and she talked about things coming out in the future, and it was just such a fun night. So this one, Christmas book, spicy, hilarious. It is so funny, so entertaining. Megan Quinn writes such chaotically fun books. So if you're looking for pure entertainment with the Christmas vibes, this is definitely one to pick up. It's got like a Christmas competition happening. There's like an enemies to lovers situation, light amount of miscommunication happening, really cute background characters. I will say the first few chapters, I was a little suspicious as to what was happening with the main character. I didn't like her at first, okay? But then as the book went on, I started really like cherishing her. And I think by the end of the book, I just loved everybody. So, and if you're looking to extend those Christmas vibes and you don't want to let Christmas go, this would be a good one to pick up. Now, although we have finished all of my top 24 books of 2024, I have a couple other things that I just have to sneak in there. One is a series. I want to say they're around like 125 pages each. So really when you put all 5 together, it's only a little bit longer than a regular book. It's called the Mind F series. I don't think I can say the word, by St. Abbey. They're like dark romance slash thriller, but the spice isn't too intense on it. I think the spice kind of increases as you read in the series, but the books themselves, I just gave the whole series a 5-star. It's very cold case, vindication, revenge, those type of vibes. If you've been a fan of like Law and Order SVU and like Criminal Minds and true crime and things like that, you would probably also love this series. I did not want to put it down. I was really upset when I was done with it. A lot of people love that book, Butcher and Blackbird. If you read that book and loved it, try this series because I have a feeling you'll love it even more. I read Butcher and Blackbird after reading this series, and I think that was a bad idea because I was just comparing the entire time to this one, and I think this one is done better. If you're okay with like darker romance and things like that, definitely look up this series. Okay, and then before I let you go completely, I need to get 2 books on your radar for 2025. These books were sent to me from the publishers, so I got to read a copy earlier, and anytime a publisher sends me a book, my review is completely voluntary. I'm not required to share any thoughts on it, and my review is always honest. So just rest assured that I'm not saying this because the books were sent to me. I'm saying it because I absolutely love them, and I think you should have them on your pre-order list for 2025. The first one is from Catherine Center. It's called The Love Haters. So I talked about the romcomers in this video. She has another book coming out in 2025. Specifically, right now it's scheduled on May 20th, 2025, and it's called The Love Haters. It follows a filmmaker and a Coast Guard rescue swimmer. Okay. It was so cute. It's clean romance, so no spicy scenes in it whatsoever, and just really well done. The other one to get on your radar is another clean romance, and this was called Worth Fighting For by Jessie Q. Sutanto. So that's the one that wrote Dial A for Aunties that I talked about in this video. She wrote a Disney-inspired romance book, and this one is scheduled to release on June 3rd of 2025. It's a retelling of Mulan. In case you're planning your 2025 reading journey, I wanted to bring those to your attention. All right, you guys, so that wraps up my top 24 books of 2024, as well as a few additions. So you should have plenty of material to work with if you're building your TBR up. If you have a book that I need to get on my radar that was a favorite of yours from this year that I didn't mention, please leave it down below so I can add it to my library list. I appreciate you guys spending some time with me today. I know this is probably a longer video, but I love talking about books, so I hope you enjoyed listening to it, and I hope you're walking away with some good recommendations. If you're looking for more book recommendations, please feel free to check out my Instagram account. I'd love you to join me over there so I can make some more bookish friends. And if you happen to just pop on this channel randomly because of the books, I generally do haul videos and also share recipe inspiration. So if you need some help with meal planning as well, please feel free to check out the rest of the videos on this channel. And I would love it if you'd subscribe before you leave. I hope I delivered whatever you needed when you clicked on that thumbnail, and I hope you have a magical day. Bye.